as a common work that we did, I also try to bring together some documents and a bit of history around the institutional critique and conversation that happened in UAL as a that were based on criticize and question UAL in their constituent part and how they relate their brands to their image. So I think it might be to think about what maybe the White Pube and other groups inside of the university has done, but in particular I center my research around the neoliberal arts rondon that made a project basically around this neoliberal constituent aspect around UAL and in general I think British University. So the action that were made as installation by the NAL was this idea of linking homoerotic content and placing to the branding of UAL, and in a way using the UAL branding as a resource and also proposition to have a situated and reallocation of knowledge. So, and also use their imagery subversively and shape it in using the bathroom as a point of questioning and a point of collection where words become something different and something that is at the same time political, but with questioning what is accepted and what does UAL want to connect their brand with, and what instead wants to be does not connect but also interfere with the direction of their branding and the direction of their profit wants to go. So I think, how do you relate? My general question for the group is, how do you relate, and which are the conversation about problematic stuff inside of UAL, so that relates to institutional racism, investment, and the outsourcing that happen inside of the campuses and gentrification around it, and how do you relate your practice to this? To what is happening and is already happened.
From the conversations we've been having about those topics and the interview that I held with Georgia, learning more about like the well-being of the students and not being listened to, and all the research that we've been doing, like all of UAL's complicit investments and the fact that they don't have, an ethical investment policy, just goes to show that they don't represent the student voice, and they're so willing to also ignore the student voice.
Like personally, as an Asian, I found it quite sometimes uncomfortable, like just being around UAL. I mean, like SCSM, because I couldn't really see any non-white tutors, like, to be honest. And like just thinking about how much they put an effort to have like Asian student because of the investment, I found it quite ridiculous to like just experience.
I honestly, in relation to like my practice and what does it mean to be an artist in this world, I think even before coming to UAL, I was never really sure. For many reasons, and definitely now, like being able to know and to somehow experience the cruelty and the violence that artistic institutions need to function. I'm not really sure if, for me, UAL has been a way to decide that I don't think I want to be an artist, and I don't want to take that kind of position.
When I arrived here in April, I didn't know much about UAL's role in violence and things like this, but when I dug a little bit and when we talked a little bit about it, I realized how I could relate to it with my other school, and how I've also seen people talk about it with art school in the Netherlands, for example, with other art schools in France, and how in the end it's truly, without wanting to minimize the problems that are specific to UAL, how sadly international it is, and especially art schools use kind of their history of being progressive and being also culturally avant-garde to construct their myth, and the clash between what they say they are and what actually happens is sadly the truth for so many art schools around the world.
Regarding the outsourcing, these people are not regarded as staff members, even though they are the basis of how the university functions. But nothing within the art school is centered around them. Many students come here to follow the myth of becoming famous, but will never notice staff members who are not teachers. And without this being acknowledged within the art school, many students will continue these practices when they graduate.
The exhibition space, it's always like clean, tidy, and seemingly natural. It's like it is naturally clean and tidy and white. But the fact that there is like so much invisibilized work that in fact is being done by the cleaners that are in terrible working conditions and without being recognized, that is how these entanglements that are both cultural and ideological play a key role in the material existence of many people. And just how the ideological machine of the art industry functions, it's by really violent ways, producing violent ways of existence and precarity among many others.
I wanted to talk about how I sort of fell into arts education was because I wasn't very academically strong, and like mainstream education wasn't for me, and art school was sort of presented to me as like this alternative. It's like the mainstream alternative education, if that makes sense. And yeah, I come from, my parents didn't go to uni, like from like a working class background. CSM was sort of the only art school I'd ever really heard of, so I was like, well, I guess I'm going to that one. And then got in, and I think the branding of UAL is sort of like you see students in ID and Dazed magazine, and like you sort of the conversations around struggle and don't really leave the art school, as well as the stories of Alexander McQueen or like other like big famous students who've made it in fashion and things like that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I've kind of like followed a similar path with CSM because it has such a big name for itself. It's had such a pull on my life since I was like really young. I knew of it, and I was kind of convinced that I wanted to study fashion here when I was like 10, and when I got to the point where I had an opportunity to study here, it felt like I just couldn't turn it down. And it seems, talking about like UAL's myth and storytelling, it does feel like I've almost been, it's been like deceptive my whole life, really, like idolizing this institution. I almost felt like I had to be here to make someone proud or make myself proud.